At some point, we'll be introducing items that were introduced in the co-defendant's trial. Those items have been signed back out. Since that trial, since the disposition of that trial, those items have been in the custody and control of the clerk of court. I don't want to reference that for obvious reasons. The person who will be introducing those items collected those items from the Moore residence. They're electronic devices. They're all non-fungible items as far as I'm concerned. They collected those items from the Moore residence, put them in evidence, took them from evidence for the last trial, brought them to the courthouse. I would like to represent, and I don't think it's a misrepresentation to the jury, that same chain. And that is absolutely still true today. She sees those items from the Moore residence and brought them to the courthouse. They've been here ever since.
What's your position on the chain of custody? Obviously, not, the court has spoken about that. You don't have to prove every element. And to me, the potential threat of having information both ways, really, having retrial. That's why when we mark these things, other concern I have is you have two exhibit numbers. I've always, I know there's a reason you have to keep them both. Maybe if there's an appeal issue going on in the other one.
I don't know that.
As far as I know, it's going through the appeal process.
All right, so we really can't change. We're going to have two. Is there a reference in there about when you put it out, does it say state versus so-and-so?
What I did is I did it in, for this trial, is a black magic marker, the number, and then I have it dated.
Okay, but the other
one is a
does it
pen.
reference anything? It just, does it say?
It just, no, it just has a date with the pen for the last
That's
one.
fine. So there's nothing but a date on there. So that doesn't give you a clue. What's your position?
I don't really have an objection to what they're trying to do. It's probably more of a logistical issue to preserve whatever. It's already
If y'all want to challenge the custody chain of being, because what I understand, you want to say from the time we got it and brought it into custody, the fact that it's been out of that to the clerk, back to y'all, we don't want to put the stage process.
It really wasn't signed. We haven't removed it from the courthouse. So the chain that I would be representing is absolutely.
It's the original bringing it to the courthouse.
Yes, sir. I wanted to leave the clerk out of it so as not to reference a prior trial.
To a basis for the objection.
All right. I think that by stipulation, we will not require any additional testimony other than bringing it to the court.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other issues?
No, sir.
Anything?
Just brief, to kind of follow up on what we talked about yesterday in terms of timing. I told Chris this morning, and it looks like we'll definitely be into tomorrow. We're not really sure if we'll be able to conclude tomorrow afternoon. With that,
I'm going to address that. I want to see how, as I understand, and I know that I'm not holding that, we can approximately 15 more witnesses.
Approximately, Your Honor.
And I want to see how quickly we move this morning. My intention is to get a feel for that, and you said maybe 7.
maybe.
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 My thought is when we break for lunch to discuss that with them. If I can get a feel for it this morning, but I'll let you know by mid-afternoon. I've already been talking with the clerk as well about the option of working tomorrow versus coming back next week.
Does Your Honor think we'll have an answer as to whether we go Saturday versus going to Monday?
That's precisely my point.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna let the jury be involved in that decision.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. But there's no need to broach that subject at this point. I don't want them to start thinking about that yet. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Next week, look like we, okay.
We're ready.
All right, you ready for our jury?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
That's all right. If you have another issue, sometimes I'm not good at reading faces. Sometimes I am, but I see somebody like that. I feel like, oh, there's something that I need to address. That's no problem. Let the record reflect Mr. Moore is present. Let's bring it up. Have a good evening, and we're ready to continue. As we've been doing, each of you solemnly swear or affirm that you have honored the court's instruction completely, not viewed anything, not talked with anyone, not discussed this case among yourselves or with anyone else and not read any accounts or done any independent research? If you have, say I do. Any member of the jury unable to make that commitment, please raise your hand. Thank you very much again, and I appreciate you don't know how nice it is to come in, and when I walk out, by the time, ask the bailiff if you all are here, he's always, yes, they are, and it's just, you're punctual, and that, promise you, that's not always the case, and I'm not being critical of other places, but it's nice to have a group of people that didn't know one another, that somehow managed to mesh together and to be as punctual as you are. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Solicitor, good morning. You may call your next witness.
Thank you. Good morning, Judge. At this time, the state calls Ryan Keith. Yes. Yep. We are.
Please raise your right hand, place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, just state your full name and spell your last name.
Yes, my name is John Ryan Keep. Last name is spelled K-E-E-P.
And if you don't mind, Mr. Keith, tell this jury where you're currently employed.
I work for Sprint
And how long have you been working for Sprint?
since October of 2009.
Okay. And what are your job responsibilities there?
I'm a records custodian. I provide records based on legal demands, and then I testify to those records.
Okay, so you can identify Sprint records, and you're able to authenticate them as being unaltered.
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, I'm going to show you, I just showed it to defense counsel. It's going to be states 82, 83, and 65. If you don't mind, take a look at these and let me know if you're familiar with them and whether or not these are Sprint records, and if these are the records provided.
Yes, these appear to be the records that we provided in the...
Okay, and do they appear to be unaltered?
Yes.
And do these show the records from Sprint for the numbers ending in 3175 and 3174?
Yes.
And is one copy just an electronic copy?
That's correct.
Your Honor, this time the state wishes to place 65, 82, and 83 into the record and publish it to the jury at the appropriate time.
All right. Any objection?
No, sir.
Without objection, 82, state 65, 82, and 83 of them.
Thank you, Judge. Now, normally when we send a search warrant or we talk with you, normally your number is the Sprint numbers, what we call the target number. Is that correct?
That's right.
So these records for 843, 385, 3175, which belongs to Sidney Moore, that's what you would call the target number.
That's right.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you something, and I got to get the board to remind me what that phone number is. Now, let me ask you something. Did you view and go through those records looking for the number 843-997-8152 belonging to Heather Elvis, the victim?
I did.
Okay. Now, were you able to decipher if the target number reached out to Heather first or if she called the target number first?
The target number ending in 3175 placed the first call.
Okay. So Sidney's number reached out to Heather's first.
That's correct.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury what date frame you looked at.
Yes, I wrote that down. That call was placed on 7/11 of 2013 at 23:50 Eastern Time. So that'd be 11:50 p.m.
Okay, and what date frame did these records come from?
The records came from March 1st of 2013 through December of 2013.
Okay, so March to December, and 3175 belonging to the defendant reached out to her first.
That's right.
Okay. Now, do Sprint numbers indicate when somebody dials *67, B67 to have the number?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Now, when you looked at when he called her, did it show B67 that he hit his number?
Not that I saw.
Okay. So his number would have shown up on her phone.
That's right.
So if there's any question on how she got the number, it was from him calling.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Now, let me ask you this. There was a lot of discussion about the last 4 phone calls. No, they weren't the last phone. When is the last phone call for this record?
Which exhibit are you read?
I'm sorry, yeah.
This is 65, Your Honor.
65.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Are you talking about the final phone call for this report?
Yeah, just the last phone record.
It was on December 20th of 2013.
Okay, so those records kept having incoming and outgoing calls after December 18th.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, I'm going to direct your attention to December 18th, the early morning hours of 3:38, 3:39, 3:40, 3:41.
Okay, I have that time frame.
Okay? Now, tell this jury who was calling him at 3:37, 3:38, 3:39, 40, 41.
Those were calls placed by 843-997-8152.
Okay? Now, tell this jury whether or not the record indicates whether or not the defendant picked up the handset.
The calls from 338 through 341 were routed to voicemail. They were not picked up.
Okay, so nobody picked up the phone.
That's right.
It went to voicemail.
Correct.
Okay. Now, tell this jury how quick those times were.
The duration for those phone calls that were routed to voicemail lasted for 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and 3 seconds.
Okay. Now, let me ask you something. You weren't in here earlier, but it's already been put into evidence. And I just want to lay some foundation so I can ask you if it's consistent. The defendant says, I turned my phone down and I put it on the bedside table. I never touched it. When you call a Sprint phone and it goes to voicemail, about how many times does it ring before it goes to voicemail?
Roughly 4 or 5 times.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendants Exhibit number 3.
I see this.
Okay. Tell this jury what that is.
This is our instruction set on how to read our PCMD reports.
Okay. Now, earlier, Mr. Galmore talked about this was a disclaimer saying the information from Sprint, they couldn't guarantee that it was accurate. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now, have you ever worked with Sprint trying to find missing persons?
I have.
And did you use this very data to try to locate these missing persons?
I did.
And in fact, were you able to find these missing persons using this?
Meeting, Your Honor.
This is a rephrase your question.
Sure. Were you able to find missing persons using this very data?
I was.
More than one missing person?
Yes.
Okay. And how many years did you do that?
From 2009 through 2017.
Okay. Thank you. One more question,
Yes.
Mr. Keith. Two more, and I'm holding myself to two more. Earlier, before those calls at 3:38, $3:39, was there also calls by the victim's phone to Sidney Moore around 3:16 and 3:17?
Yes.
Okay. And did one of the calls route to voicemail?
Yes.
And how long was the duration?
There was a call on 12/18/2013 at 3:17 that was routed to voicemail, and that duration was 9 seconds.
Okay. And was there a call after that?
There was.
And tell me whether or not there was a connection between her phone, 9978152, and the defendant's phone.
Yes.
And how long did that last?
261 seconds.
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Keith.
You may cross-examine.
Let's talk about your actual testimony, Mr. Keith.
Yes.
I think you testified that the first contact between Mr. Moore's phone and Ms. Elvis's phone was July 11th of 2013?
That's correct.
Okay. And you indicated that that was a call from Mr. Moore's phone to Ms. Elvis's phone?
That's right.
Can you tell us how Mr. Moore would have received Ms. Elvis's telephone number?
I don't know that.
You did testify that she was able to receive his number because when the call went through, it didn't say *67.
That's correct.
Now, regarding the last telephone calls that are on that entry, I think you said between 3:38 and 3:41 a.m. on December the 18th, there were several routed calls.
That's right.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what a routed call is?
Yes, a routed call is a call that either goes, well, specifically for those calls, they were routed to voicemail. That means that the receiving party does not answer, so it routes the voicemail platform to allow the caller to leave a message.
Now, when you have this duration information for that, does that duration time include the amount of the voicemail?
It will include the amount of the voicemail, yes.
Okay, so if the duration on the call was 0.3 seconds, does that mean that no voicemail was left on the phone?
It means that that call was active for 3 seconds, but I don't know if they were able to leave a message or not.
Okay, and because the call is routed, that means that no one answered that phone call.
That's right.
If you have 4 routed telephone calls, each in a duration of approximately 3 seconds, would that be consistent with someone simply refusing to answer the phone?
I can't answer that. I can just say that the phone was not answered.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about this PCMD. Can you tell the jury what that stands for?
Yes, that stands for per call measurement data.
And what is per call measurement data?
It's information where when a phone interacts with our network, it measures the amount of time it takes for the signal or the message to get from either the tower to the phone and back, or in reverse, from the phone to the tower and back to the phone.
Kind of like radar, you bounce the signal off and it comes back.
Yes,
Okay. And just like math, it's distance, rate, and time.
that's correct.
Okay. However, this is a little bit different because there are often variables that affect the time and the distance. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And some of those variables include whether or not they're buildings.
Yes.
And those variables include whether or not there's signs out there, billboards.
That's right.
And those variables include whether the amount of signal strength is coming off of an antenna or tower at any given moment.
That's possible, yes.
Also, whether or not the phone or the device is in a one-way or two-way mode. Is that an issue?
That actually I do not know about. I don't have that information.
Sprint devices, let's see. Do Sprint devices have a one-way connection or multiple handoff connection?
That is, that verbiage would, I believe, is in reference to if it's connected to one tower or if it's using multiple towers for a connection.
So that affects the time that it takes for the signal to bounce off and back.
Not necessarily the time. If it has multiple connections, it's more in reference to the accuracy.
So that affects the accuracy of the information.
Yes.
And in fact, Sprint does not guarantee the accuracy of its location information.
For the per call measurement data, that's correct.
Right. So why does Sprint collect this per call measurement data?
That information is collected by our engineering team, and previously it was connected for engineering data.
So it's for internal use for Sprint?
Yes,
To check the network to make sure the network is functioning properly?
that's correct.
It's not designed to tell you the distance between a phone and a device.
Well, that was the purpose for the information, but that was used again for just engineering purposes, for finding range and location.
And once again, this information, Sprint does not guarantee the accuracy of this information.
That's correct.
And Sprint says so when they give police departments these records.
That's right.
Now, you're the record custodian for Sprint. The records that you looked at, Exhibits 83 and 65, did those phone records come with a disclaimer from Sprint?
Those records are accurate.
Okay.
They are a separate type of report from our PCMD.
Okay, so these are not PCMD data.
That's right.
Okay. And it tells you what tower was used?
It does.
Okay. Does it tell you what sector off of the tower?
It does.
But just to be clear, the per call measurement data, Sprint does not guarantee the accuracy of that information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Redirect.
Mr. Keefe, just to clarify, that data that Mr. Galvin was asking you about that Sprint won't guarantee the accuracy of, that's the same data that you use as a Sprint employee to help find missing persons, correct?
That's right.
And numerous missing persons.
Yes.
No further questions.
Recross. Yeah.
No, sir.
Thank you. You can step down when you wish to speak to the excused.
Yes, please.
Any objection?
No, sir.
You're also free to leave, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May call your next witness, Liz.
Your Honor, at this time, the state calls Jill Domogauer to the stand.
Please raise your right hand, place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. State your full name and spell your last name.
Jill Lee Domogauer, Domogauer.
Ms. Domogauer, where are you employed?
I'm currently employed with the Oregon County Police Department.
How long have you been there?
With Horry County, about 11 years.
And what is your title?
I'm a crime scene investigator.
You've been a crime scene investigator for those 11 years.
9 of those years.
What did you do before you were a crime scene investigator for Horry County?
I was a road officer.
How long were you a road officer?
For Horry County, about 3 years.
How much experience in law enforcement do you have total?
Prior to coming to Horry County, I worked with the city of Conway for 11 years, about 22, 23 years.
Okay, in law enforcement.
Yes.
To become a crime scene investigator, what kind of training do you need?
In order to become a crime scene officer with both of the agencies I worked for, you had to be a certified police officer, which I am. Then you had to go through a promotional process, and after that, you had to have continuing education in some forensic fields, photography, fingerprinting, DNA collection. There's multiple training.
Blood spatter, things of that nature?
Yes.
So you have to have exponentially more training than just a regular road officer.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And do you continue education every year?
Absolutely.
So were you employed in this capacity back in December of 2013?
Yes, I was.
And did you have an opportunity to become involved in this case?
Yes, I have.
Tell us a little bit about how that involvement initiated.
Back in December, I was called to respond to a home on Slyfox Road.
Okay. And did you respond?
Yes, I did.
And when you got there, were you told whose house you were responding to?
I was responding to, I believe, the house of Terry Elvis.
And were you informed that that was the father of the subject of this case, the missing subject?
Yes.
Okay. And what were your duties? Well, speaking of duties, what do your duties entail? I skipped over that. When you respond to a scene, what are your duties? What are you supposed to do?
My duties can range anywhere from taking photographs, sketching, collecting evidence, preserving evidence, packaging evidence, testing or processing, using fingerprint powders or other sources of forensic tools.
So you do a multitude of things at any given crime scene, depending on the situation?
Yes, jack of all trades.
Fair enough. And when you arrived at Slyfox Road, the victim's father's home, what were your duties there? What were you tasked with doing?
I was responding to that home with my lieutenant, Lieutenant Peter Sestair, and my task was to document and process a vehicle that was at that location.
What kind of vehicle?
A Dodge Intrepid, green in color.
Were you told why?
It was the vehicle that that missing person was last known to be in her car.
And did you process that vehicle?
Yes, I did.
And when you say process, tell us what you mean when you say that.
Well, processing goes from photographing the vehicle. In this particular case, I photographed the vehicle, collected swabs, fingerprinted the vehicle, and did basically a cursory search on the inside.
And did you complete all these tasks on this Dodge Intrepid?
Yes, I did.
Including photographing?
Yes, I did.
Did you provide those photographs to my office?
Yes, I did.
And would you recognize them if you saw them again?
Yes, sir, I would.
Ms. Domogauer, I'm now showing you what's been marked for identification as State 67 through 81. I'd like you to flip through those briefly and tell me what those are.
These are copies of the photographs I took that day.
And are those exact copies of the photographs you took?
Yes.
Do they fairly and accurately represent the vehicle as you saw it that day?
Yes, it does, sir.
Have they been tampered with?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I seek to interstate 67 through 81.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, state 67 through 81 are admitted each being a photograph of the vehicle.
Permission to publish, Judge?
You may, sir.
Ma'am, I'm gonna let you keep these in case you can't see the screen well. And what I'd like to do at this time is let the jury see these photographs, and you kind of just tell us what we're looking at as we look at it. While we're waiting on that to load, when were these pictures taken?
I took these pictures on December 20th, 2013.
And did you need a search warrant for this operation?
No, we were giving consent by the property owner, Mr. Elvis.
All right, Ms. Domogauer, lead us through this. What are we seeing here?
This is going to be State's Exhibit number 67. This is just an overall view of the residence, 105 Slyfox Trail, and you can see the green and colored Dodge Intrepid in the driveway. This again is at the same location. This is just the rear end of the Dodge Intrepid where you can see the license plate of the vehicle.
What exhibit number is this, ma'am?
I'm sorry, this is Exhibit number 68.
Okay, and go ahead.
This is State's Exhibit number 69. This is a passenger side view of it taken from the back end of the vehicle.
Now, while we're looking at the overall outside of the vehicle, did you notice any damage to the vehicle?
Normal wear and tear for 2001. The vehicle appeared to be operational, no heavy damage, just minor, dings and scratches that you would find on a car that age.
No flat tires?
No. No, sir.
The engine wasn't out of it?
No, sir. This is going to be State's Exhibit 70. Again, it's a picture now of the driver's side taken from the rear angle of the vehicle.
And again, no extensive damage on this side of the vehicle?
No, sir. This is a State's Exhibit number 71. This would be the driver's side front area of the vehicle.
And again, no significant damage, no windows broken?
No, sir.
The door locks weren't jimmied?
No, sir. This is State's Exhibit number 72. This shows the hood and the passenger front fender. Excuse me. This is State's Exhibit number 73. This is the interior of the vehicle taken from the driver's side view.
How did you get the doors open?
I was provided a key.
By who?
Terry Elvis.
And when you opened the car, what was your initial impression of the inside of the car?
It was messy.
Did it look, could you tell if it was driven by multiple people or?
When I first opened that car, I'm 5'10". Whoever was in that car was a little bit smaller. The seat seemed to be very close to the steering wheel.
Did anything in the car give you the impression this was used as a family vehicle?
No, it appeared the only person that could sit in that car would be somebody on the driver's side.
Go ahead.
This is going to be State's Exhibit number 74. It's just a picture of the rear view mirror and the visors. This is State's Exhibit number 75. This is a view of the mileage on the vehicle. This is going to be State's Exhibit number 76. This is just a showing of the passenger seat, center console, and cup holders.
Go ahead.
This is going to be State's Exhibit number 77. This is the interior of the vehicle taken from the passenger side front.
Now, when you saw this and you took a photograph of this, did it appear anyone had been sitting in the passenger seat?
I would say no, sir.
Go ahead.
This is State's Exhibit number 78. This is the back rear seats of this vehicle.
When you took a picture of this, did it appear anybody could sit in the back rear seat of the vehicle?
No, sir. This is State's Exhibit number 79. Again, the rear seats, but this is just showing on the passenger side view.
And what are we looking at here? What's generally in the back seat of the back there?
Bags of clothes, miscellaneous items.
Men's clothes?
I did not see any men's clothes.
So that these were all appear to be women's clothes to you?
It appeared to be women's clothes, cosmetics, toiletry items, grocery items, those kinds of things. This is going to be State's Exhibit number 80. This is the trunk of the vehicle.
Back up one time, if you don't mind, please. And this is State's what?
This one,
Yes, ma'am.
that picture we're looking at right now is going to be State's Exhibit number 79.
All right, let me ask you a question. In the bottom right-hand side of this vehicle, you said there were groceries and bags and things. In the bottom right corner of this photograph, what is that item you see there?
It's orange juice.
Is it a new bottle of orange juice?
No, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, Tony. Thank you.
Again, this is State's Exhibit 80. This is the trunk of the vehicle.
Go ahead.
This is State's Exhibit 81. These are identification and the registration for the vehicle. Some of the paperwork and the cards I found in the vehicle bearing the name of Heather Elvis and the registration of the vehicle.
So we have a social security card, a student ID. What is this document on the far left?
What you have here is a cosmetology or cosmetologist type license. The social security card, I believe that's a St. James High School ID card. The registration for that vehicle, and the last column you're going to have a Wells Fargo debit card and a Blue Green Resorts kind of card.
And whose name were on all these documents?
Heather Elvis.
Okay. And why did you think it pertinent to photograph these items?
These items were found in the vehicle. It shows you who's operating and who's in the vehicle.
Okay. Did you find any identification in the vehicle that belonged to anyone else?
No, sir, I did not.
Thank you. Did you find any illicit items in the vehicle?
No, sir, I did not.
Any drugs?
No, sir, I did not.
Alcohol?
No, sir, I did not.
Weapons?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you see any signs of a struggle in or around the vehicle?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you see any blood?
No, sir, not on the inside nor on the outside.
So no?
No, sir.
Did you see any drug paraphernalia?
No, sir.
Was the victim's laundry in the vehicle? Was that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any, for lack of a better term, red flags in the vehicle? Anything that would lead you to believe, to understand what happened to the victim?
No, sir.
And was that the entirety of your processing of the vehicle?
That day, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you do anything else, Inspector Domogauer, in relation to this case after you processed Heather Elvis's car?
On that same day, December 20th, as I was clearing up from Slyfox with the vehicle, I was told to respond with my lieutenant again, Lieutenant Sestair, to the Peachtree Landing.
And that was the same day you said?
Yes, sir.
And did you in fact respond to Peachtree Landing?
Yes, I did.
And when you arrived, what did you see?
Your typical boat landing in Horry County.
Was anybody else there other than you and Lieutenant Sestair?
At that time, no, it was just myself and Lieutenant Sestair. There was a road officer who was down the road stopping anybody from coming to the landing.
And when you arrived, what did you and Lieutenant Sestair do at the landing?
Lieutenant Sestair was there as a supervisor. My job was to document the landing just so we'd have an idea of what the landing looked like. To my knowledge, this is where the vehicle was located. So we photographed it. I photographed the landing. I also did a search of the landing and some of the areas surrounding it.
Did you see anything suspect at the landing?
No, sir.
Did you see any signs of a struggle?
No, sir.
Did you find any drugs?
No, sir.
Did you find any weapons?
No, sir.
Did you find any blood?
No, sir.
Did you complete a ground search of the wood line?
As far as I could go without getting in water.
Did you find anything there?
No, sir.
How about keys or a telephone?
No, sir.
Identification?
No, sir.
A purse?
There was nothing there.
Okay. Did anything at that boat landing that you responded to on December 20th indicate that there had been an altercation at that landing?
No, sir.
Did that complete your processing of the landing?
No, I was told to respond to an apartment on White River Drive, and Lieutenant Sestair stayed behind at the landing, and I responded to the apartment.
What apartment?
If I can refer to my notes. Apartment 541 White River Drive, Apartment C.
And why did you respond to that location?
It was a location I was told to where Heather Elvis was staying.
And did you in fact respond?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do when you got there?
I met with Detective Cobble and other officers. I was given a search warrant to execute, and I took photographs and executed the search warrant.
I'm going to show you now what's already been entered into evidence as states 11 through 31. If you don't mind, take a look at those and tell me if those are the photographs that you took of that apartment.
These are the photographs I took that day, sir.
And those are photographs of what?
The inside of the apartment, the outside of the apartment.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm not going to seek to republish these. They've already been published previously by the prior witness. Sure. But again, you are the one that took those photographs.
Yes, I am.
I'm going to ask you just a couple quick questions about them without republishing them. When you arrived, did you notice any signs of forced entry to that apartment?
No, when I arrived, I take a photograph of the door jamb, the door frame, and I also pay attention to the windows of the apartment. I found no signs of forced entry.
None of those things were broken or busted in any way, shape, or form?
No.
Did you and obviously you photographed the inside of the apartment?
Yes, sir, I did.
What was your impression of the inside of the apartment?
It was well lived in.
Was it messy?
Yes.
Was that consistent with the condition of Heather's car?
Yes.
Okay. And again, inside the apartment, did you find any illicit drugs of any kind?
No, I did not.
Did you see any weapons of any kind?
In kitchen, I saw kitchen knives and cutlery there, but other than that, nothing that shouldn't be there.
Fair enough. Did you find any keys?
Not to the apartment.
Did you find any car keys?
Oh, no car keys. No, I found a storage key.
Okay, so you didn't find the keys to the Dodge Intrepid?
No, I did not.
Did you find a telephone?
No, I did not.
Were there any signs of a struggle in the apartment?
None that I saw.
Did you photograph the bathrooms in the apartment?
Both bathrooms, yes, I did.
Did you photograph the trash cans in the apartment?
I didn't photograph the trash cans, but I did search the trash cans.
You did search the trash cans? Is that standard during processing of a scene?
I searched all the trash cans, not only in the bathroom, but also in the kitchen.
When you searched the trash cans, was there actually trash in the trash cans?
Yes, there was.
Did you find anything of note, looking back now, Investigator Domogauer, in the trash cans?
Yes, in the front hall bathroom, I did.
And tell us a little bit about what you found in that trash can, please.
Yeah, well, in that front trash can, I found, of course, tissues and things of that nature, but I also observed a pregnancy box. There was no applicator, it was just the box.
So you found the box for a pregnancy test in that trash can?
Yes, I did.
Without the applicator?
No applicator, it was an open box.
Did you find the applicator anywhere in that apartment?
No, sir.
That seems like a strange thing to remember, if you don't mind me asking, without photographing it. Tell this jury why you remember and how you remember specifically finding the box for a pregnancy test in that apartment.
I was I was photographing the apartment. I was searching the trash. You remember when you search trash, but the pregnancy test box stuck out to me. I had recently given birth to a child from which I had a difficult pregnancy, and I just kind of took note of the pregnancy box.
That makes sense. Let me ask you this. Why wasn't that object collected at that time?
At the time, it wasn't what we were there to look for. It didn't seem, at that time, there was nothing to point its significance.
This was still an open investigation for a missing person?
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't really know if a crime had been committed up to this point?
No, sir, I did not.
So to you, the pregnancy box didn't necessarily have any evidentiary value at that point?
It would be of no evidentiary value to the food container boxes I found in the kitchen trash.
And again, you just testified that the only reason you remember it is because it hit a personal note with you?
It hit a personal note to me, yes.
Looking back and knowing what we know now, do you think that would have had evidentiary value now?
Yes.
Fair enough. Did that complete your processing of that apartment?
That day, yes, sir.
Okay. And that was done on what day?
Referring back to my notes, that was done again on December 20th. I went to 3 places on December 20th.
So everything you've done thus far has been done on December 20th of 2013?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Investigator Domogauer, subsequent to that, have you done anything else to assist in this investigation?
Yes, I have.
Tell the jury about that, please.
I've done several searches. I've done several land searches, processing evidence, transporting evidence. I've also executed warrants and searches of other locations.
What location? Specifically, have you been to the defendant's home?
Yes, I have.
When did you go to the defendant's home?
Referring back to my notes so I don't say the wrong date, I apologize.
No, that's fine, ma'am.
February 21st of 2014 was the first time I was ever there.
What was the purpose for going to the defendant's home?
There was a search warrant that was executed in 2 homes that day.
And you were part of the party that executed that warrant?
At the Moore's house, yes.
Okay. And when you got there, did you participate in that execution?
Yes, I did.
And during the course of that participation, did you collect any items of evidentiary value?
Yes, I did. I collected several items.
Okay. Court's indulgence, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Y'all want to see? You all right, if I may? I think the easiest way to do this, Judge, would be if Investigator Domogauer could come off the stand and help me. Thank you, Your Honor. Investigator, if you wouldn't mind, come on down here and let's try to do this as efficiently as possible.
Yes, sir.
Let's start on the bottom and work our way up. I'm showing you now what's been marked for identification is State's Exhibit 41. Do you recognize this item?
Yes, I do, sir.
All right, if you'll take it and if you'll tell the jury what that item is.
It's a HP Pavilion Slimline computer tower. I recognize that it's got a evidence barcode on it. It also has serial numbers, and it also has a tag with my handwriting on it from where I collected it from.
And can you tell this jury where you...
Objection. May I approach briefly?
Yeah.
Okay. Investigator, if you don't mind, continue. I'm going to set this down here so we can keep going. Continue with what you were saying about this device, please.
Like I said, the serial number, the description of it, the evidence barcode number with case number on it, and there is a sticky tape, it's hard to see unless you're looking at it, with my handwriting on there the day I collected it.
Okay, and did you collect that item from the Moore's household?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to enter States 41 in evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, States 41 is admitted.
And investigator, if you'll just set these items in front of the bench, we'll try and keep them out of everybody's way as best we can.
Apologize.
All right, and this is in no particular order, Your Honor, because there's a lot of stuff here. I'm showing you now what's been marked for identification as States 46. Can you tell us what States 46 is?
States 46 is a red Samsung cell phone that was collected from 8786 Highway 814, master bathroom closet.
Okay, and that's States 46.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us one more time what it is?
A red Samsung cell phone that was collected from the master bathroom closet at 8786 Highway 814.
And remind us who lives there?
Morriston.
And you collected that and put it into evidence?
Yes, I did, sir.
What'd you do with it after that? Bring it to the courthouse?
Well, yeah, I mean, I transported it to the police department, we stored it, and I brought it to the courthouse.
Your Honor, we seek to enter States 46.
Without objection, State 46 is admitted.
If you'll set it right down there. If you could open up that box right there for me, ma'am, and tell us what that is. Keep it down there if you don't mind, on the floor. And Your Honor, I'm directing the witness's attention to States 38 for identification purposes at this time. All right.
You want me to bring it out or just tell you?
Well, tell us what it is first, please, if you don't mind, ma'am.
The jury will.
It's a DVR recorder, a Samsung DVR recorder.
And where was that in the house? Or was it in the house?
It was in the Moore's house.
And where did you, specifically, where did you get it from in the house? Do you know?
I would have to look back at my notes to give you the exact location. My label that is on here is pretty worn.
Okay. And
But
that
I
was,
can tell that's what this is with the serial number, and the model number, and I can tell that's what this device is.
and you did seize that item and put it in that evidence?
Yes, I did.
And
Along with a mouse and power cords.
what exhibit number was that investigated?
38.
Your Honor, we seek to enter States 38 in evidence.
Without objection, States 38 is admitted.
Thank you.
Apologize.
That's all right. Thank you, ma'am. I'm showing you now what's been marked for identification as States 51. Can you tell us what that is?
No, excuse me. States Exhibit 51 is a phone that was collected from Sidney's room that is labeled Sidney's phone. It also has a case inside of it.
So it's a telephone with a case.
Yes,
And you collected it from where?
Sidney's room. The address 8786 Highway 814. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Your Honor, we'd seek to enter States 51 at this time.
Without objection,
Without objection.
States 51 is admitted.
Investigator, let me ask you this. You read these notes. Whose notes are these?
Those are mine, those are my handwriting.
And that's how you know what these are?
That and by looking at the description of the item.
Okay, thank you. If you'll set that down there, please. Showing you now States 52. Can you tell us what that is, please?
States Exhibit number 52 is a purple Samsung that was collected from the family room of 8786 Highway 814.
And did you put that into evidence and bring it to the courthouse?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, we'd seek to enter States 52.
Without objection, it's admitted.
Ma'am, I'm showing you now. It's like Christmas over there. I'm showing you now States 45.
My envelopes. Okay. apologize. This is an iPhone, white in color, with notation, Sidney's room, collected at 8786 Highway 814.
Seized from what room?
Sidney's room is what it states.
Okay. Your Honor, seized Interstate 45.
Without objection, 45 is submitted.
Showing you states 44, ma'am.
States Exhibit 44, looking at the notation on the outside of the bag, says 8786 Highway 814, Sidney's room, Carson's iPod is what's listed on the note card. And that's what this is. We've got my marking and my notation of the table I collected it from. And that was State's Exhibit 44.
Your Honor, tender states 44.
Without objection, states 44 is admitted.
Showing you now, ma'am, states 43.
State's Exhibit 43 on the outside of the envelope states master bathroom closet, 8786 Highway 814. Green LG rumor, I believe it's Carson phone is on the outside of the bag. And that's just on, there's sticky notes, I think, with a phone number of what this phone is.
Okay, but it is a telephone.
It is a telephone, yes, I'm sorry, it's a phone. And that's State's Exhibit 43.
Tender states 43, Judge.
Without objection, 43 is submitted.
Showing you now states 42.
State's Exhibit 42 on the outside of the bag, there's a note card that says Ashley's phone, 8796 Highway 814.
And it says whose phone?
Ashley's phone. This item I brought to the courthouse.
Okay. And this was seized from 8796 Highway 14?
8796 Highway 814 by Heather Brumman, who's now known as Heather Wilson.
Okay, and who lives at 8796?
Kate Kaysen, that's the Kaysen's residence.
And in relation to the defendant, who are the cases?
I believe to the defendant's in-laws,
And you actually helped execute the search warrant?
not at that residence.
Okay. Your Honor, tender states 42.
The objection. Without objection, states 42 is submitted.
All right, now we're on states 47. And you can just tell us what that is.
State's Exhibit 47, the outside of the label says master bathroom closet, Nikki iPod.
So this is an iPod. And did you seize this item?
Yes, I just want to look at it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I'm not going to put all the way back in. That is indeed the fact that's in this envelope, and that states Exhibit number 47.
Tender states 47.
Without objection, 47 is admitted.
Showing you states 53.
States Exhibit 53 on the note card notes, it says 8786 Highway 814, more iPad. And that's what's in the box, the bag, and it's States Exhibit 53.
Does it tell you where that iPad was seized from?
Not on the note card, I would have to look. It's the residence says 8786 Highway 814, Sidney's room.
So it was seized from Sidney's room?
Yes, I apologize.
All right, thank you. Tender states 53, Judge.
Without objection, 53 is submitted.
Almost done. Showing you states 50.
The note card states 50, 87,
86 Highway 814. Sidney's room, it's labeled Tammy's phone. And State's Exhibit 50 is a cell phone.
Do you know what kind of phone this is?
I believe it'd be iPhone.
Okay. And it's whose phone?
It's labeled Tammy's phone.
Tender states 50, Your Honor.
Without objection, states 50 is admitted.
3 more, showing you states 49.
State's Exhibit 49 was something that was collected at 8796 Highway 814. It's described as Ashley's iPod. iPad, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And that's what this is, State's Exhibit number 49.
And you seized that and brought it to the courthouse?
I brought it to the courthouse and was seized by another.
Okay. Tender states 49, Judge.
Without objection, 49 is admitted.
States 48.
State's Exhibit 48 on the outside is marked iPod, Sidney's room, 8786 Highway 814. State's collected from Sidney's room, and that's State's Exhibit number 48.
Tender 48, Judge.
Without objection, 48 is admitted.
And finally, states 39. Tell us what states 39 is.
State's Exhibit 39 is a sync module from a 2013 Ford F-150. This was taken off of the black F-150 that belonged to Mr. Moore.
Tell us what that is one more time, please.
It's a sync module.
Okay,
It's a computer part to a truck.
thank you. And what exhibit number is that?
State's Exhibit 39.
Tender states 39, Judge.
39 is admitted without objection.
Thank you, investigator. You can have a seat. Investigator Domogauer, after you seized and transported these electronic devices, you and your team, did you do anything else that day to assist in this investigation?
That day?
Yes.
No, sir, I did not.
Court's indulgence.
Sure.
Please answer any questions that the defense may have, ma'am.
Excuse me, thank you.
Cross-examiner.
No, I just didn't want to put that out.
Domogauer, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
All right, I want to talk briefly. You were a patrol agent for a number of years, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
If I understood you correctly, you were a patrol agent for a number of years prior to becoming CSI?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just briefly, I know you touched on it, but specifically as it relates to the CSI training, you go through a fairly rigorous group of different courses that you have to take through the Criminal Justice Academy and others. Is that right?
Not only the Criminal Justice Academy, but there are other facets of education we go to.
And at that point, you learn to, sort of at the first opportunity, to document any scene in which you're dispatched, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you and I have had cases where you're down there documenting down to the millimeter or the centimeter or the inch of different splatters or markings or things of that nature. Is that right?
Pending what the scene calls for, yes, sir.
And a lot of times whenever you arrive on the scene, you don't necessarily know what the issues are going to be at the case because often you arrive very early on, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so at that point, it's something that you look for to be able to try to document all you can, right?
You try, yes, sir.
Because you don't know what may be important or what may become relevant at some later point, correct?
Yes, sir.
And part of that, whenever you receive your training, you understand that you can utilize things like DNA, correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
You're trained to try to search and try to take samples of DNA from whatever scene you may be investigating, whether it's a known crime scene or just a place you're dispatched to investigate. Is that correct?
I have been specifically trained for the collection of DNA, yes, sir.
Right. And with regard to DNA, for example, you can have touch DNA, right?
Absolutely, there are many forms, and touch is one of them.
Touch DNA, if somebody's on a couch, different hair strands can fall off, and that can provide you an adequate sample, correct? Under the right circumstances?
Depending on the circumstances for hair, but different surfaces can yield different sources of DNA, yes, sir.
And obviously fingerprints.
Yes, sir.
You can utilize fingerprints. You can use, under the right circumstances, or document, say for example, foot indentations, correct? Footprints.
There's several forms of that, yes, sir.
That's right. Same thing, for example, like with tread marks, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And sometimes those aren't even always visible to the naked eye, right?
Sometimes they're not.
You got to use powders or oblique lighting in order to make them apparent to the naked eye, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you first got on the scene, if I understood you correctly, you went down to the landing. Is that correct?
I went to Slyfox first that day, and then I went to the landing afterwards.
Okay. Now, at this point, the vehicle had been moved from where it was initially found by investigators, correct?
From my understanding, yes, sir.
It had been moved from the landing. It's at the Elvis residence whenever you get involved, correct?
Yes, sir. By the time I get involved, that's where the vehicle is.
And you did your inspection at that time?
At that time, yes, sir. It's the first time I looked at the vehicle.
Now, I would imagine that in a situation like that where you've been dispatched, wouldn't it be more ideal for you to take possession of that vehicle and bring it to the M.L. Brown building or one of the law enforcement centers to utilize your resources and evaluate it in that context?
You can, and you can also do a search on scene.
Okay, all right. Did you ask to be able to take the vehicle to the possession of the police department?
I did.
Okay, and why didn't you do that?
I didn't have a warrant for the vehicle at the time. We were operating under what's called consent to search. Mr. Elvis gave us consent to search the vehicle, and we were searching it there at that location.
But did he refuse consent for it to be transported to the police department?
He didn't want it to be transported.
So at that point, you did not request or seek a search warrant at that point?
At that time, no, I did not. It was fresh, and there was nothing overtly looking at the vehicle that was alarming, saying, hey, red flag.
Given the amount of items in the car, we noticed a number of plastic bottles and different items in the cup holders there. Do you remember seeing those?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you take possession or seal them, any of those items, just to have in your custody for any future investigation?
Nothing of that nature was removed from the vehicle at that time.
Okay. Most likely, any of those things probably contain fingerprints of some kind, correct?
Possibly, yes, sir.
So you went from the Elvis residence and then you went to the Peachtree boat landing, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when you got there, by this point, any possibility of foot indentations or impressions or tread marks that maybe could have been uncovered had probably already been demolished by that point and would be unrecoverable.
I would probably say that the landing itself is a blacktop asphalt surface, so unless there's skid marks, which there wasn't, there was no treadwear there. The landing itself is concrete, and around the landing you do have grassy dirt areas. It's generally the river will come up in high tide, but at that point in time there was nothing that was recoverable on December 20th.
Even though it was a hard surface landing, you did not observe for example, the dirt that may accumulate on the tread mark tire that can still give you the impression of the tread mark. You didn't observe any of that? No, sir. The road to get to the landing is also asphalt, so in order to put a dirt tread impression, you would have to have a lot of mud on your tires prior to that kind of. Let me ask you this, did you utilize any oblique lighting or powders to try to look at the swampy or the muddy vicinity right there around the paved area going into the boat landing?
I'm not understanding.
Well, you said you looked at the vicinity of the landing, right? Not just in the concrete spaces?
Yes.
Okay. Given that we know that not all footprints or indentations or different marks are visible with the naked eye, did you utilize any oblique lighting or powders to try to see if anything could be uncovered at that point?
I don't know of any powders that work in water. We did do flashlights looking, but also I cleared the scene, but Lieutenant Sestair stayed behind, and a dive team, DNR teams, and search water recovery teams at that point came in and did their part.
Okay. They were already in place, in other words, they were already conducting the water search.
They didn't do anything till after I took my initial photographs and searched, and then they came in after me and did that.
Okay. Now, you did document, I believe, you took note of, there were some cigarette butts near where the car would have been placed, correct?
Where any car would have been placed. It's a big landing. But yes, kind of towards like, I don't know if you've ever been to the landing. You have like the concrete area where people can park your boats and trailers. And then you kind of have like this little small patch of grass if you want to walk up there, watch the water, fish, or do whatever. Kind of in that little area between the dirt and the pavement and some on the pavement. I found some cigarette butts there.
Okay. Now, were those cigarette butts ever tested for Sidney Moore's DNA?
They were tested, yes.
They were negative?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe, in fact, he was excluded from the cigarette butts.
All right. Now, you went from the landing to the apartment of Miss Elvis, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And you've seen all the number of photographs. There are a number of, among other things, empty alcohol bottles that were visible.
Yes, sir.
Quite a number of them, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, at this point, were you aware that she had been on a date the night before with anybody? Did you know any of the factual?
At this point in the investigation, I wasn't given any kind of factual information. The warrant, basically the only information that was passed on to me in briefing is this young person is missing, unknown circumstances at this time, and I was in the apartment to search for things to basically to collect some of her DNA, if needs be. And the detectives who were there did the searching of the apartment.
Right. And you did collect some DNA of hers, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that was for the purpose that at some future point you may want to see if her DNA was to show up at some other location.
Well, we do it for several reasons, but generally when you have a missing person, yes, you try to collect a source DNA sample soon in an investigation. Hopefully you won't need it, but if you do, it's better to get it as soon as you can.
All right, so you obtained her DNA sample, you took various photographs of the scene, correct?
Oh, the apartment, yes, sir.
Apartment, yes, ma'am. I'm going to ask you something. There was a photo that I've gotten. It's not a very good copy. Did you uncover a driver's license for a woman named Jamie Morse, M-O-R-S-E? I
don't have my exact notes, but if I can look at that photograph, I'd recall my memory. But I do recall collecting a license.
Give me just a moment. I forget what number. I'm going to mark these as 456 for ID only at this point. Let's see. I'm going to show you, let's first look at...
Take a look at what he's
Oh, I'm sorry.
showing witness.
Yes, you're not introduced yet, but, okay.
Let me start off, let me show you what we've pre-marked as states number 5. Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you all of them, 4, 5, and 6 for you to look at. Do you remember seeing those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Did you take those photographs?
They appear to be the photographs I took, and the only reason why I'm saying that is because they're black and white and they're very blurry.
Okay.
So I can just say they appear like the ones I took, but I do recall items that look like this there.
And it appears, how is the driver's license, where is it located whenever you come across it?
It's tucked in the cigarette pack.
Okay, and did that seem of interest to you at the time?
No, sir.
Okay. You took a photograph of it though, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Did you know who that Jamie Morse is or know of any connection?
No, sir, and I believe that's probably why they told me to take a photograph of it.
Okay. All right, now was that taken also close to a debit card for Miss Elvis? Were they in the same vicinity?
Without seeing the overview photograph, I can't tell you. I'm not quite sure, sir.
Okay, would that surprise you to learn?
Pardon me?
You don't recall seeing a Heather Ellis' debit card in the vicinity of this ID in the cigarette?
Without seeing the overalls to refresh my memory, I just don't recall at this time.
Okay, well, let me do this then. Let's do Defendants 7 for ID on. Let's see that. Do you remember?
Yes, sir, that appears to be the same wicker-type container that was in the other photograph, so yes, sir.
Right, the surface area is the same as...
It appears, yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So Miss Elvis's debit card was in the vicinity of this ID that was tucked into the cigarette container, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you know at that time who that individual was?
Who, Heather Elvis?
No, the ID, Miss Morse.
Yeah, I have no idea at that time or even today who that person is.
Okay. Is it possible, was that used as maybe like a fake ID by somebody?
I have no idea, sir.
You don't know if there was any investigation to find out who that was or figure out where that came from or what it was for?
I don't know if somebody did or not, sir.
Okay. Let me show you another, and this is kind of this is also a bad quality, so I apologize. This is going to be Defendants 8 for ID only at this point. Did you also uncover I can't tell if it's a credit card or some type of maybe hotel card? You remember uncovering that?
Okay, and I just want to remind you, I didn't do the searching. Detective Cobble and his other officers that were there at the apartment did the searching. Sure. And when they uncover items like this, they would call for a camera, and that's when I would come in and take this photograph. But yes, this is a photograph I took of that day, and I believe it looks like the couch area, but I do recall seeing this.
Okay, you recall seeing it, and you recall taking that photograph?
Yes, I do. This is Defendants Exhibit 8.
Okay, now what's the, can you tell what that is?
It says Palace Players Club. I don't know whether that's a hotel key card or some kind of card of some sort.
It kind of has the arrows pointing downward, almost like you would have one of those.
It looks like a hotel or a key card for some kind of location.
Okay. At this point, we'll seek to admit Defendants 4 through 8 into evidence.
Any objection?
I'd just like to take a look at them, Your Honor. I haven't
Sure,
seen
take your time, we haven't seen it, absolutely. And there's here to be a copy from what she took, she said, so there are copies of
Yeah, they appear to be photocopies of photographs that I've taken.
Right.
While they're doing that, do you recall any discussion or any investigation as to any connection with the Players Club or whatever the name was on that card or hotel key?
That would be something that the detectives would discuss, not something they would discuss with me.
Okay.
Without objection, Judge.
Without objection, Defendants 4 through 8 are admitted.
Okay. Published to a jury, Your Honor?
Sure.
Mr. Domogauer, at some point, whenever you concluded your investigation into Miss Elvis's apartment at that time, you went in late February to execute the search warrant at the Moore's residence, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Prior to the search warrant of the Moore's residence, had you been provided with any DNA samples from Mr. Moore or Mrs. Moore?
I can't recall. I believe there were some samples.
Do you recall how those samples were obtained and provided to you?
No, sir.
You don't recall at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you recall which detective obtained the samples?
Now, without looking at a chain of custody, I can't tell you, sir.
All right. But ultimately, you processed and went through and reviewed the Moore items that you uncovered, correct?
I can't,
Okay.
sorry.
The items that you recovered from the Moore residence, you processed those and searched those for DNA, correct?
There are items that I collected if items needed to be sent to our state lab for that kind of processing, that would go to the state lab for that kind of processing.
For example, you did that on the F-150, correct?
There were items that were taken from the F-150. I did not process the F-150.
But you know that the F-150 was processed and searched for any indication of Miss Elvis's DNA in that vehicle, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And those were negative results, correct?
I believe so, they're inconclusive, yes, sir.
In fact, of anything that was uncovered from the Moore residence, there was nothing at any point of any of the items that were uncovered that ever contained Miss Elvis's DNA, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Moore's, Mr. Moore's DNA was not uncovered at her apartment at any time, correct?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay. Let me ask you this. From the first time you went out until the late February, whenever you executed the search warrant on Mr. Moore's residence, were you ever asked to go back and try to obtain or compare DNA samples from a Mr. Schiraldi?
That name doesn't sound familiar to me.
Nobody came to you and said, listen, go check one of the back bedrooms and see if he has any touch DNA on the door handle, for example?
No, sir.
That's something you could have done, correct? Or at least attempted to do?
If that person is someone who would be in that apartment, then you would reasonably expect his DNA to be there.
Okay, all right. And were you ever asked to, or let me ask you this, were you ever provided DNA samples of Mr. Schiraldi of any kind?
I have no idea, sir.
Okay. Would it be contained in your report if you had been?
It would be contained in an evidence sheet. I personally did not collect it, so therefore it wouldn't be in my report if it was collected.
To the best of your knowledge, none was?
I'm not sure, no, sir.
To the best of your knowledge, was any DNA collected, or were you involved in collecting or evaluating any DNA from Jeremy Fleming?
I have no involvement with that name.
Portion over, John.
Sir.
I'm sorry, you were, when you executed the search warrant on Mr. Moore's residence, that was late February, correct?
Yeah, I believe February, late February, February 21st.
Okay. But you went to Miss Elvis's apartment in, I think it was on the 20th of December, is that correct?
Roughly after she was reported missing, I went to Miss Elvis's apartment.
Okay. In that interim time period from late December through end of February, were you ever asked to go to the residence of Mr. Schiraldi and evaluate or do any investigation at that residence?
No, sir.
Were you asked to go and evaluate or check for DNA or any items of evidentiary value in the truck driven by Mr. Schiraldi?
No, sir.
Were you ever asked to go to the residence of a Jeremy Fleming and evaluate or analyze anything of investigatory value at that residence?
No, sir.
How about a Jerry Stevens? Were you asked to go to his residence and perform any kind of investigation?
No, sir.
Let me ask you this, was there any residence other than Miss Elvis and Mr. Moore's where you were asked to go give an investigation?
Those were the only two residents I was involved with, sir.
How about anybody else's vehicle? Were you asked to go take a look at any other individual's vehicles during the 2 months that this investigation was going forward?
The only vehicle I had dealings with in the beginning was the Dodge Intrepid and the F-150 late in February. Those are the only two vehicles I had dealings with.
Okay, so no one else? Or
No one else, sir, no, sir.
Ms. Domogauer, did you receive I know you took an item from Mr. Moore's truck. I think it was a smart box or something to that.
The sync module?
The sync module, yeah. And what that contains, sort of tracking data, is that correct?
I have absolutely no idea what it contains. All I know is we had a warrant for a sync module, and I was there to collect it.
You didn't know what a sync module does?
Absolutely not.
All right, well, I won't ask you anything else. I'm sorry, no more questions, John.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. What about a Billy Smith? Did you check his DNA?
No, sir.
What about a Jimmy Johnson?
No, sir.
John Doe?
No, sir.
Why were you searching Sidney Moore's residence?
There's reason to believe he was involved in the case, sir.
Talk to you about your interaction with Mr. Elvis whenever you went to photograph and process the car. Did
Yes.
Did Mr. Elvis inhibit you in any way from processing that vehicle?
Oh, absolutely not. He was totally cooperative.
But he wanted to keep the car at the residence.
Well, yes, sir.
Do you know why?
I don't know why personally for him, but it's not something that raises any alarms to me.
Did you get everything done that you wanted to do to the car at that time?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. At that time, did you know a crime had been committed?
At that time, sir, she was just a missing individual. We were trying to see if we could find her.
What was your primary goal?
To see if we could find Heather Elvis.
So you weren't processing that car as a crime scene?
No, sir, nothing indicated from the visual of the car that any crime scene took place in the car or around the car.
On December 20th?
On December 20th.
All right, so what about the landing on December 20th? Were you processing that as a crime scene?
No, it was just more for documentational purposes. This car was found here, this person is missing.
So again, what was your primary goal at the landing?
To document it.
And were you trying to find Heather Ellis?
Well, the car was found there. This is the last known area where the car was, so we document it, we look for it. Any kind of clues. We're trying to find Heather at this point.
Fair enough. What about the apartment? When you went to the apartment on the same day, were you processing that as a crime scene?
No, sir. Again, just trying to gather facts, trying to find out where Heather could be.
Any of these places, if they were suspected at this time of being a crime scene, were you processed them a little differently?
Yes, sir.
He talked about finding key cards or something at the apartment. Were you aware at the time of processing that someone else lived there other than Heather?
Yeah, there was another bedroom. I mean, you could tell there was people stayed there.
So it was evident that someone other than one person, Heather Elvis, lived there?
Yes, sir.
And how was that evident?
Well, you have a separate bedroom. I believe a different name, Bree, in the bedroom. There was also some notation of the landlady, I believe.
So it was evident to you in processing it or photographing it that more than one person had been in that apartment at any time?
This is a young person's apartment.
I want to talk about the truck real briefly and then I'll be done. The F-150 that you seized states Exhibit 39, this Ford Sync module. When did you seize that Ford Sync module?
I would have to look on my notes, but it was quite some time. It wasn't December 20th.
Was it February of 2014?
It could have been, yes, sir.
Well, take a look for me if you don't mind and see if you can tell them definitively because I don't want to testify for you.
I would need my notebook with further notes.
I'm going to show you your notebook now, if you don't mind, to refresh your memory. If that'll help you, take a look and tell me when that truck was processed.
I collected the sync module on February 18th, 2016.
Oh, okay. So that's significantly after, and I'll take that back from you if you want me to. Or you hold on to it until we're done. So the truck was actually processed significantly later.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question. Would you expect for and he talked a lot about touch DNA. What is touch DNA?
To make everybody understand, I just touched this, my DNA's there.
2 years from now, do you expect your DNA to still be there?
I don't expect it to be there past tonight.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If I wash something, do you expect to find DNA on it?
No, and that's why I said, I know the staff, custodial staff in the courtroom will wipe all these surfaces, so by tomorrow, it's most likely not going to be there.
And again, had you expect the truck, the landing, the apartment, her car, any of those places to be a crime scene, would you have processed them differently?
Yes, but touch DNA is very tricky. I did process the Intrepid for touch DNA.
Okay.
I did collect touch DNA samples from the Intrepid. It came back inconclusive because touch DNA is something that's very sensitive, it's very fresh, and anything can manipulate that, whether it be the weather, time. You're talking about something that is an exterior outside.
So if I wipe something out, that's going to remove my touch DNA?
It can possibly, yes, sir. Somebody else touching it over you who secretes more bodily fluids will override yours.
So if there was, for example, Heather's DNA on the steering wheel and Mr. Elvis drove the car home with gloves on, or Casey Canterbury touched the steering wheel with gloves on, that would have removed her touch DNA?
Yes,
And would that cause that DNA test to come back inconclusive?
yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Retrial.
Just very briefly, Your Honor.
Sure.
So, we know initially when you first responded, you weren't necessarily processing as a crime scene, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But we know Mr. Moore was, about 2 months, was ultimately arrested and charged with her disappearance, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So it's safe to say at some point between the time when you first went out and the end of February 2014, it became the opinion of law enforcement that this was in fact a crime scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, you were not asked to go back out and conduct any more thorough evaluations at that point?
No, sir.
You wish the witness to be excused?
Please, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
You're, next step that is you're free to leave. Thank you.
I'm still under subpoena?
Yes, ma'am. You're free to leave. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take our break at this point. When you hear room, get our Virginia deliberations, we'll be with you in about 10, 15 minutes. Thank you. Have anything from the state before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
Anything from the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll be at ease for about 10, 15 minutes. Thank you.